Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner. And welcome to this horror movie pack review video, the last one for this current November 2023 series. So today we're going to take a look at a six pack that I have here. Very much a horror comedy, six pack as it turns out. So we've got Blood Diner, Parents, Earth Girls Are Easy, Sundown, The Retreat of the Vampire, Fido, and Boy Eats Girl. Those are the six movies that I watched, and then I'm going to go ahead and review for this video and let you know if I'm going to keep this, if I'm going to sell it, if I'm going to get individual releases, etc., etc. So yeah, this will be the fourth and final horror movie pack for November here, as it's November 30th. So let's just go ahead and get into it. I'll go like I have with all these movies or these horror packs in the order in which I watched them. So the first one I watched was Blood Diner right here. Let me get my notes here. So Blood Diner is a 1987 American horror comedy directed by Jackie Kong and starring Rick Burks, Carl Crew, Roger Dower, Lynette LaFrance, and Lisa Guggenheim. It was written by Michael Sohn. The plot follows two brothers setting up a vegetarian restaurant as a front for them to kill women and collect their severed body parts to resurrect the Lumerian goddess Shitar. So yeah, that's Blood Diner. I've never seen this movie before, obviously. It's pretty over the top. I would say it's more of a comedy horror than a horror comedy. And the difference being this is much more like 80% comedy, 20%. There's not really any horror in it other than the fact that you know, you have the horror of these brothers killing people, obviously, but it's not really, there's some gore, there's some blood. But the vibes, the everything about this movie screamed comedy more than it did any sort of horror. Um, I had a good enough time with it. I don't think I'm going to necessarily rush out to get this one on a single release. Um, but for what it was, I thought it was okay. It was different. The premise is pretty ridiculous, of course, but that's kind of what you expect, especially from like an '80s cheesy horror movie, comedy movie. Um, yeah, like I said, there's some decent blood and gore, a lot of comedy, not a lot of horror. I thought the acting was pretty bad, to be honest with you, which kind of fits the tone of the movie, I guess, the feel of the movie. But overall, Blood Diner is okay, I would say. Next up, I watched Boy Eats Girl right here. Now, I actually have this on a different horror movie pack, one that I believe I reviewed last year, the year before. Um, but I figured I wasn't gonna. I figured I'd watch it again because I didn't remember a lot about it, and it's been a while. So, Boy Eats Girl is a 2005 horror comedy film directed by Stephen Bradley and starring Samantha Mumba, produced and shot in Ireland. The plot tells us the plot tells of a teenage boy who comes back to life as a zombie, similar to the plot of the American film My Boyfriend's Back. Um, I actually like Boy Eats Girl, actually. I think I liked it a little bit more this time than I did the first time, which because I didn't really remember it. Not that I hated it, but um, it's nothing overwhelming. It's got another premise where it follows teenagers and this guy thinks about hanging himself when he finds out that the girl that he likes is involved with somebody else potentially, and then but then he thinks better of it, and his mom comes into his room and knocks him off his ladder or whatever, so he does end up dying. And then there's some ridiculous chant, or she goes to a church and finds a way to bring him back to life. And of course, he's a zombie and a flesh eating zombie. Um, you know, but I don't know. I like it. The gore is really good in this movie, particularly when it comes to a tractor mower scene. I'll say, really over the top, but really fun gore. I didn't mind the characters in this movie. Frankly, I think that's probably the most surprising thing. Like the main characters are pretty good. The side characters are okay. Nobody's really overly annoying or anything. I think that's one thing that stands out. And then the gore, and it's got some pretty good effects. So yeah, Boy Eats Girl is a good one. Earth Girls Are Easy is a 1988. That's the next one I watched. 1988 American science fiction musical romantic comedy. Film that was produced by Tony Garnett, Duncan Henderson, and Terence C. McNally, and was directed by Julian Temple. The film stars Gina Davis, Julie Brown, Charles Rocket, Jeff Goldblum, Damon Wayans, and Jim Carrey. The plot is based on the song "Earth Girls Are Easy" from Brown's 1984 EP "Goddess in Progress." Um, this was probably my least favorite of this horror movie pack. Now, part of that's the fact that there's this really doesn't belong on this horror movie pack. There's nothing horror about it. I mean, I would argue there's not even that much sci-fi about it, other than the fact you get these three furry creatures from another planet that come to Earth. This is much more of a romantic comedy musical, as it says, from the '80s. So now I will say the fact that it's from the '80s, it does have some charm to it, some cheesiness. You know, it's interesting to see Gina Davis and Jeff Goldblum and sort of their sequel to The Fly together once again, even though this movie's got a completely different tone and feel than The Fly. That The Fly was in 1986. This is 1988, so a couple of years. Um, but essentially, you have these three furry creatures from another planet that come down and are trying to learn the language and learn about Earth and the people, and they run into the character Gina Davis's character, who's kind of this she works at a hair salon. She's kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Ditzy. Um, as are the other gals that work at this. She's got a boyfriend who's kind of been cheating on her and stuff, and it's a romantic comedy. It just doesn't belong on this horror collection, so that's why it's going to be my least favorite of the six. Not so much that it's a horrible movie that doesn't have some value, although I don't necessarily know that I'll rush out to rewatch it again. It's pretty silly and over the top, but I just don't think it. I just think it's out of place on this horror six pack, even though all the other ones are sort of comedies or satirical sort of black comedy movies. So yeah, Earth Girls Are Easy. That's the that one. And then next I watched Parents from 1989 right here. Now this movie I actually saw probably about 25 years. No, not 25. Probably about 22, 23 years ago, around 2000. I rented it at because I thought it looked and sounded interesting, and I was a big fan of Randy Quaid, especially at that time and in the '80s and '90s. I really like Parents. I mean, I don't know why it works as well as it does. Well, I kind of do, but it's a 1989 American black comedy horror film directed by Bob Bab Balaban and starring Randy Quaid, Mary Beth Hurt, Sandy Dennis, and Brian Madorsky. It's set in the 1950s California suburb. The film centers on a 10-year-old boy who suspects that his parents are not what they seem. It was Balaban's debut as a feature film director. Yeah, this one's got it's a very much a black comedy. It's a lot of satirical nature to it. Um, but I really enjoy it for several reasons. One, I think the cinematography and the way the movie's shot. They have some really wonderful shots, some really wonderful camera work, especially for the late '80s. Um, the way they focus on characters, it's just very well done. And then you throw in the 1950s setting and aesthetic. That really works for me. And then you get really solid performances by the two main leads here, the parents. Randy Quaid and Mary Beth Hurt really carry this movie because of the way they play their characters. They're not they never play them as being like totally villainous, but at the same time, they're not over the top like cartoonish either. They have a very good balance between being creepy and being loving parents. So it's a very hard thing to pull off, but they do it. And yeah, I really enjoy Parents. It might be my favorite on this horror movie pack. You'll have to wait a few minutes to find out, but I remember liking it when I first saw it. I thought it's very weird. It's very different. I'll say that, but that's part of what I like about it. I can't think of any other movie like it. There might be out there. I'm not sure that, not that I've seen though. But I think Randy Quaid, Mary Beth Hurt's performances, as well as, like I said, the cinematography, the camera work, the '50s aesthetic, and the setting, and just kind of the comedy slash creepiness vibes that they have in this movie. It really works for me. And then at the end of the movie, you got a really cheesy 50s sort of family style. The score is another thing that I really like. I can't believe I didn't mention that before, but the score really works for this movie as well. Very kind of over the top and creepy, but also very like 50s. I forget what the closing song is with the ending credits, but it's like Purple People Eaters or something, or Purple Dime, something that's just really over the top and like a fun 50s kind of song to go with this movie. And I don't know, it works for me. Parents works for me probably better than it should on paper, but I think because of those performances and the directing, it works for me. So that's Parents. And then after that, I watched, where are we at here? Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat. This was probably the biggest surprise to me in terms of how much I enjoyed this movie. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't even know it existed. Never seen it before, obviously. But the Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat is a 1989 American Western comedy horror film directed by Anthony Hickox, and it stars David Carradine, Bruce Campbell, Morgan Brittany, and Deborah Foreman. It was written by Hickox and John Burgess under the leadership of the ancient Joseph Martelak. Colony of vampires seeks a peaceful life in the desolate desert town of Purgatory. Key to the transition is repairing the town's artificial blood factory. Martelak summons the human designer of the plant, who brings his wife and two young daughters along for what he thinks will be a pleasant desert vacation. Ethan Jefferson is a vampire who wants to return to hunting and feasting on humans. Soon, the plant manager and his family were caught up in a civil war as Jefferson organizes a revolution. In the midst of the vampire civil war, a young descendant of the Van Helsing family arrives intent on destroying all vampires. And of course, that's played by Bruce Campbell, the Van Helsing character, and he's marvelous in this movie. I really enjoyed him, and that's one of the things I can say about this movie. Besides really liking the Western horror aspects of it, with the vampire Western aesthetic of it, I really like the characters and the actors and actresses in this movie. Obviously, David Carradine. Bruce Campbell's probably my favorite. I think Morgan Brittany's really good. Deborah Foreman looks amazing in this movie, and she's also very good in it. Um, yeah, I don't know. It just worked for me. I mean, it started out a little bit slow, but as the movie goes on, it really picks up the pace, and I really enjoyed it throughout. I was really entertained by it. It's not scary. Again, this might be more of a comedy horror, with the horror part just being the fact that vampires are involved. It does have some blood and gore. I mean, there's a beheading early on in the movie. There's a lot of shooting in the middle and end of the movie with guns and stuff. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed it. I thought it had a very interesting and unique premise of how these vampires are, for the most part, trying to live a peaceful existence and live on artificial blood and leave the humans alone. But of course, you have a faction of that group that thinks they should go back to their hunting ways. That's truly who they are. And I thought it was a really good and interesting premise, and I thought it was pulled off pretty well. But I really enjoy the actors, actresses in this movie, the characters in this movie. There's just a lot of fun to be had here with Sundown, the Vampire in Retreat from 1989. So that's that one. And then finally, the last one I watched just last night was Fido here from 2006. So Fido is a 2006 Canadian zombie comedy, film directed by Andrew Curry and written by Robert Comiac, Curry, and Dennis Heaton, from the original story by Heaton. It was produced by Blake Corbett, Marianne Waterhouse, Trent Carlson, and Kevin Eastwood of Anagram Pictures, and released in the United States by Lionsgate Entertainment. The film takes place in the 1950s aesthetic alternate universe where radiation from space has turned the dead into zombies. This resulted in the zombie wars, where humanity battled zombies to prevent a zombie apocalypse, with humanity and the ultimate victor. The radiation still plagues humanity, as all those who die turn into the undead unless the dead body disposed of by decapitation or cremation. In order to continue living normal lives, communities are fenced in with the help of a governing corporation named ZomCon. ZomCon provides callers with accompanying remote controls that control zombies' hunger for flesh, as to use them as menial task servants. So that's Fido from 2006. This is an interesting film. I actually do like the premise, and again, once again, the idea of this film. Definitely a different take on zombies. Um, Yeah, I think the premise is very interesting, and I've never seen anything like it before. So that right there makes it intriguing. As far as the movie itself, it has its entertainment value to it. I thought it was slow at times. Basically, you have this guy who's one of the zombies. He ends up becoming a servant of this family. Um, I didn't put down the um, what's her name is in this movie from The Matrix. Carrie Ann Moss is the mom. Uh, I don't know why I didn't put the actors down in my notes here. You have Billy Conley, Carrie Ann Moss, Dylan Baker's the dad, and then the son, who kind of befriends this zombie, and it's kind of like his dog, like his pet, which is why the title is Fido. It's definitely more of a comedy once again, although again, like some of these other movies, there is gore, there is an aspect of horror from the zombie standpoint, but it's not your typical zombie apocalypse movie. That's what I liked about it. The comedy didn't all work for me. It's kind of a mix, to be honest with you. I was expecting a little bit more from it. The effects are okay. The performances are pretty good. Once again, it has that 50s aesthetic, which is interesting going back in time. It's a couple of these movies here have a 50s aesthetic. Um, yeah, overall, I thought it was pretty decent, and I could see watching it again. So that's Fido. So, kind of summarizing this horror movie pack in these six films, if I had to go in order from least favorite to favorite, my least favorite, like I said, would be Earth Girls Are Easy, and that's more or less because there's no horror or sci-fi element really to this movie. It's a romantic comedy from the '80s about that has three furry aliens, and then they're not furry throughout the movie either. So that would probably be my least favorite. That'd be six, and then I would say I'd probably go Blood Diner five. To be honest with you, Fido four, um, Boy Eats Girl three, Sundown: The Retreat of the Vampire two, and then Parents would be my favorite of this horror movie six pack here. So comment down below if you guys have seen any of these movies, what your thoughts are on them. I'd be really curious to hear. Like I said, I've seen a couple of these before, but it's been a while. There's a lot I hadn't seen on this horror movie pack. There's some pleasant surprises, some kind of okay reactions to the films. But go ahead and comment down below. I'd be really curious to hear what other people have to say. Overall, at the end of the day, I am going to keep this horror movie pack because I don't think I'm going to rush out to get any of these movies on individual releases. If I did get any on individual releases, it would be Parents and maybe Sundown. But I don't think I wouldn't get Fido. I wouldn't get Boy Eats Girl, especially since I have this on a couple horror movie packs. I definitely wouldn't get this one, and I don't think I would get Blood Diner either. I mean, Blood Diner is a kind of a fun, campy, over the top '80s movie. Um, but I don't need to have it on an individual release. So that's why I'm going to keep this horror movie pack. I do think there's enough entertainment here, enough rewatchable value for most of these movies that I'll go back and revisit this. But I don't love any of them enough, other than maybe these two, that I'm going to rush out and get an individual release. And I don't think I'm going to even for these two right now. So my conclusion is I'm going to keep this six movie pack horror collection as part of my horror movie pack. So like I said, comment down below. Share your thoughts on this overall series. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed putting it out for you. I'll have an intro video for my December series here in the next day or so. So stay tuned for that. But I hope you enjoyed this review video and this series. Please like this video. Hit the little notification bell down below so you don't miss any of my upcoming review or videos, horror content. So make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of those things. And yeah, that being said, I hope everybody's doing well, enjoying the holiday season, and stay scared. Bye.